I finally have a moment for you to talk about some animation PNG tuber drama that has been on my radar for about a week now. From what I can gather, this started with a tweet on May 1st of 2025 from an account known as bronyfandon't. This post alleges that Saberspark was involved in a sexual misconduct encounter within the time frame of 2012 to 2013. And directly attached below this is what they claim to be a testimony from the alleged victim of Saberspark. At the time of recording this video, the person who had made these allegations has chosen to remain anonymous, to which I have to say, I don't quite understand why you wouldn't go to your local law enforcement for justice at that point, rather than two people whose jobs are to literally broadcast things to massive audiences. That being said, I'm not going to be speculating on who the alleged victim is because, quite frankly, I don't give a fuck. To summarize the allegations as briefly as I can, this person states that in 2011 they had a parasocial crush on the YouTuber Saberspark. It was in 2012 when they went to their first ever My Little Pony convention, at which she met Saberspark. The testimony then alleges that Saberspark had took her into his room, thrown her on his bed, and forced himself on her. She states that she maintained her friendship with Saberspark even though she felt taken advantage of from that one night, and she did this through Skype until they met again at another My Little Pony convention in 2013. It should be noted that even though Skype had shut down May 5th of 2025, 4 days after this post was made, there is no screenshots of any Skype conversations between this alleged victim and Saberspark. The second instance of alleged misconduct took place in the elevator and bathroom of the hotel in which the My Little Pony convention was being hosted. She then goes on to state that she spent the night crying with a friend. To my knowledge, this friend has not come forward and made their presence known to the public. In fact, outside of this testimony, there's not really any evidence linking this person to Saberspark at all. I'm not bringing this up to invalidate the allegations levied against Saberspark. I bring this up to highlight my point that if this person wanted to stay anonymous and seek justice for what has happened to them, they should have gone to their local law enforcement where they could have gotten an investigation started and they could have stayed anonymous. But they chose to make this a public venue spectacle by going through a My Little Pony fan account on Twitter and a cartoon reviewer on YouTube in order to publicly blast Saberspark. And look, I love rolling around in the slop like anyone else, but if you want true justice and legal repercussions to happen for something that has happened to you, making all of this public is a surefire way to sink any chance you have at going to trial to seek actual penalties against the person who has hurt you. This is not legal advice. This is me telling you to go seek legal advice from a trained professional and not a fucking brony fan account. If you were 18 in 2012, you must be like 30 by now. So how are you older than me and you don't understand this? bronyfandon't claims that these allegations will be discussed further in a video on the I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel. Before that video was posted, however, bronyfandon't made a series of replies, some of which telling people to stop questioning the victim's story. To which I have to say, no, because people asking for evidence is reasonable. Now, as stated in the Twitter thread, this was then covered by a channel called I Love Kim Possible a Lot. For the duration of this video, I will be simply referring to her as KP. Now, despite Saberspark being in the thumbnail and title of this video, the segment talking specifically about allegations against him only lasts for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I should add, of a 2-hour and 5-minute runtime video. And look, I make long-form content, so I understand you can't always easily condense topics down into a neat little video that is cohesive and well-paced. That being said, the amount of memes and tangents and unrelated stuff in this bloat this video well beyond the scope of what it should have been. I counted at least 9 memes and tangents that had nothing to do with either topic within the first 3.5 minutes of your video. Or if we're being more accurate, the first 2 minutes of your video, as the first 1.5 minutes is a YouTube premiere countdown. This segment includes 2 parts, one in which a random person reads the allegations out in their entirety, and another part where another random person talks about the definition of explicit consent. I believe their name is Courtney, but I'm not entirely sure because I'm playing this video at 2x speed because it really does ramble. I agree with a lot of the takes here that when you're going to engage in sexual conduct, you should get an enthusiastic and explicit yes from your partner before you engage in said conduct. I don't agree with her take that people who don't ask for consent are doing this inherently maliciously because they know secretly deep down inside that they don't have consent to do this. Look, I've had a lot of bad sexual encounters in my lifetime, and I've had a lot of guys get handsy with me without even asking. Hell, I've had girls get handsy with me without even asking. Sometimes people are just weird and awkward and nervous, and they start doing things that they think is okay for them to do without realizing that it's not okay to just go for it. Now, I'm not saying this excuses this kind of behavior. I'm simply stating that to say this is inherently malicious because the person knows they don't have consent is a little bit of a stretch, a leap of logic. But what I want to say is this conversation that KP has with this other person is of the viewpoint that the allegations are already proven 100% true with evidence. This conversation is said with the mindset that Saberspark is already guilty. And again, I'm not saying we should dismiss the allegations, but when the tweet said that this would be covered in further detail in this video, and this video does not cover it in further detail, it kind of makes people question the validity of this. Especially because the only evidence that ever came out to even link this person to the convention this occurred at was a screenshot of a couple of emails from 2012 from the Canterlot Gardens event organizers. Or that's what we can assume because the screenshot doesn't really show the contents of the email or even the subject line of the email, it just shows the sender name. Which also doesn't even confirm that this person was at that My Little Pony convention with Saberspark because it's just an email exchange back and forth with the event organizers and not proof that they actually attended. And again, I'm not saying this to cast doubt on the alleged victim's testimony. I'm simply stating this to reiterate that if you want to stay anonymous and get justice for wrongdoings that have happened to you, you probably should not go to a brony fan account on Twitter to air all of this public. Now, following the release of this video and these tweets, the internet didn't really respond well. This culminated in KP taking down her video and then telling the person who alleged these claims that if they didn't out themselves to the public, that she would out them to the public. On top of this, bronyfandon't had continued to try to double down on this through multiple Twitter threads and replies. At one point, they said that they would have evidence to show within the hour, and to my knowledge, they still haven't posted anything. But what is known is they went live on Twitter where they basically implied that they were going to jump off a bridge. It was so severe and alarming, in fact, that public services were called on them and they promptly ended the stream. Now, I don't want to come off as callous, but I feel like if you're suicidal over you alleging that someone else committed crimes and then not being able to back it up with evidence, and then you get called out for your lack of evidence on that, that's kind of ridiculous. I understand that everyone has their own struggles with mental health, but I could not for the life of me ever imagine a scenario that I would personally be in where I kill myself over my brony fan account receiving backlash because I called someone a rapist. It just feels a little self-serving to make yourself the victim in the situation when there's already an alleged victim. And if the claims aren't true, then Saberspark is a victim of your misinformation. Saberspark made a response video to all of this, in which he basically just outright denies the claims ever having happened. A few people who actually celebrated these claims coming out as a reason to hate Saberspark thought that it was strange that Saberspark provided no evidence that this didn't occur. Bizarrely, they seem to have no such qualms about evidence being shown for the original claims. And unfortunately, that which is claimed with no evidence can be dismissed with no evidence. Because of the mishandling of this evidence and the poisoning of the well, it is likely we'll never know the truth of the matter. Something like this could never go to trial because of how severely bronyfandon't and KP dropped the ball while handling the situation. When I was younger and more immature, I have certainly covered things in the past where, looking back on it, it would have been much better to let the legal system handle this rather than myself. I too have made cringy-ass call-out videos that were more self-serving than they were about getting true justice. And in doing so, I also had hurt victims by not handling their case seriously enough. So I don't say this from a position of an outsider looking in. I say this from my own personal experiences. If someone comes to you with claims of a crime, tell that person to seek legal counsel from a lawyer. Because whether you're a Twitter account, a YouTuber, an Instagram influencer, or whatever the fuck, you are not equipped to deal with this. I'm not going to speculate on whether or not these allegations took place. I find that to be distasteful. From what little evidence has been provided, there is no way to tell one way or the other. I do find it contradictory that the alleged victim wants to stay anonymous while also going through this extremely public venue in order to seek repercussions against Saberspark. That doesn't mean the allegations are false, I just simply fail to see the logic in that. But I'll end things off with this. I find the behavior of both KP and bronyfandon't to be very disgusting. KP's video is entertainment driven, with the victims being an afterthought, which should not be the case when allegations this severe are being levied. You shouldn't be trying to make a 2-hour meme compilation when you're discussing something as serious as sexual misconduct and rape. Meanwhile, the actions of bronyfandon't are distasteful for a completely different reason. Hijacking someone else's traumatic experience and making yourself the victim of a situation, especially because your deliberate mishandling of this has caused it so that the victim will never see justice, makes you the lowest of the low, in my opinion. I want to make this abundantly clear. You are not the victim of this situation. In fact, dare I say, you are a villain in this story. You stated that you had stopped this alleged victim from going to local authorities. You have stated that you convinced them that it was pointless to seek legal repercussions against Saberspark. You had directed them to contact a YouTuber in order to break their story. And none of these actions were altruistic on your end, despite you trying to frame it as. You were driven by the idea of canceling Saberspark like how you canceled Black Griffin. Touch fucking grass. You're a Twitter account with a My Little Pony PFP. You're not the district attorney. You're not the police. You can't do shit in this situation. And look, I get it, ACAB, the system's broken, but you're not a replacement for the fucking broken system. Anyways, this was a shit show. I fucking despise that I had to cover it. And until next time, that's all I got. Broken pieces, we fall apart and you say, stay with me, broken dreams, and we drift apart, but you say, stay with me.